Everybody, and welcome to another 30-foot drop tapping in webinar. Tonight we are doing part 5 out of 6, and we're focusing on accessible tourism and events and discussing why it's worth investing in. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. 30-foot drop acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures, and to elders both past and present. You must always remember that under the tarmac and asphalt, this land is, was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. We'd also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities Disability Services for funding this and many other initiatives. Without their support, so many projects such as Two Wise Monkeys would never actually see the light of day, and as a community we'd be so much poorer for it. This webinar, is part of the Realities and Advantages of Access and Inclusion Grant awarded to 30-foot drop as part of the Information Linkages and Capacity Building Grants of 2018 to 2019. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. First up, unfortunately, we do not have the resources to monitor all of our live streams during these sessions. So if you want to ask any questions or interact with us, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. On that page, you will find a chat box and a Q&A box. Enter in any questions that you have there. Now, we're going to be covering a lot of information in a short period of time, so we recommend that attendees take what actions they can to minimise distractions. Now, I know this can be hard because after all, it's 6 o'clock at night, and if you're like me and you've got kids, it can get pretty hard, okay? And to actually help with that, we're actually recording these sessions. So if you find that you can't watch all of this or you want to go back in the future and actually review what it is we went over, okay, we're going to be recording these and storing them on the recording them and uploading them to the 30-foot drop YouTube and the 30-foot drop Vimeo channels. So you can hop in there and have a look. Now, if you enjoy what we do today, please follow us on social media, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a review. All of these things really help to get the 30-foot drop brand out there. Now, we'll be referencing a lot of research during today's session, and all of the information, all of the research that we reference to is available on the 30-foot drop digital resource library. We've got a lot of good stuff there, so I really encourage you to head on over and have a look at it. It's on the 30footdrop.com.au website. At the end of the webinar, we have a short survey that I would really appreciate if you guys were to fill out. It is 6 questions in 30 seconds, and you'll find the link to it at the 30footdrop.com.au/live page. Okay, so if you go there and you scroll down to the bottom, and you will find survey or webinar 5 out of 6 survey. Okay, do that one. Okay, so allow me to quickly introduce myself. For those that don't know me, I'm Ben. I'm the managing director here at 30-foot drop. I am a C5 quadriplegic, and 30-foot drop is dedicated to educating the community through open, honest discussions. I am see no evil of your wise monkeys. Okay? It's very obvious that I have an impairment. Okay? My hands don't work properly. Although you can't see it right now, I'm sitting in a wheelchair. You know, these things are quite easy to see. Now, the reason that I am see no evil is that using the information that you learn in these webinars over the course of the 6 that we do, we hope that you will gain enough information to see no evil about disability and impairment. My co-presenter Lisa, who is not doing tonight's, she is hear no evil. Now, I won't ruin her story, but she does have an invisible impairment. Now, the thing is that you wouldn't know that unless she told you. And that's the thing. With invisible impairments, you don't know that they're there unless they tell you, and until you hear what they have to say. And for that reason, she is hear no evil, okay? For exactly the same reason. By the end of the webinars, we hope that you will hear no evil about disability and impairment. But isn't there normally 3 wise monkeys? Who's the third? Well, the third wise monkey is going to be you. You are going to be speak no evil. Because when you leave here, you'll speak no evil about disability and impairment. So, how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? Well, there is a lot to learn about people with impairment and their potential impact on your business, especially from an accessible tourism and events point of view. So first up, we're going to have a look at the most recent Australian research that you can understand the size of the accessible tourism market in Australia, in WA, okay? Then we're actually going to break down the segment and have a look and to examine the characteristics and habits of this segment to allow you, as the business owner or decision maker, to actually understand this market segment. After that, we'll have an open forum session where you guys can ask me any questions and I will answer them. And then we will finish, and that will be the end of the evening. So how are we going to do this? Well, as I said before, 30 Foot Drop, we are all about educating the community through open, honest conversations. So how we like to do things is through fun, experience, and honest, open discussion. So feel free to ask me any questions at any time, okay? They don't have to be on what we're discussing tonight. They can be about anything, and I will answer them, okay? That's what we do here. Now, you'll notice that there is very little written content on my slides, okay? That's because you're here to interact with me, your presenter. Okay, in order to facilitate this, I really encourage you to head across to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the content today, okay, I want to go over some terminology so that way we reduce confusion and you understand what it is I'm talking about. So first up is the difference between disability and impairment. Disability and impairment, they're two words that often get used incorrectly, okay? Or people think that they mean something that they don't. So, let's start off with impairment. An impairment is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of physiological or psychological function. In short, an impairment is your medical diagnosis, okay? Another way of thinking about it is your impairment is how you are different to what's seen as normal. gotta love my air quotes. So it's how how you differ from normal. So my impairment is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic with post-traumatic stress disorder in remission. That's how I differ from the rest of society. Now, a lot of people think that that's what disability means. Disability is talking about how you are different, but it's not. Disability actually means something else. What it means is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level with others, okay? And this is often due to social and environmental barriers. Now, the way to think about disability is to actually think about the word itself, okay? Disable, something that makes you unable. So in this case, it is something that makes you unable to participate in an activity or service, okay? And it is often the barriers that will stop you from doing it. They can be either social or environmental, okay? And when I say environmental, I don't mean just like the natural world around us, okay? Anything to do with the built anything to do with buildings and that around us, that's all part of the environmental barriers. So, for example, steps disable me from being able to access your goods and services. Okay? They disable me. They make me unable to get into your store. So you see, that's actually quite different to what people think. Okay? An impairment is how you're different. Okay? And if you think about it, we're all impaired in some way, really. Okay? And the disability is what stops you from being able to be part of society. So, that's the first one. The second one is the difference between access and inclusion. A lot of businesses tend to lump these words together and think that they mean the same thing, but they don't. Okay? They actually have quite a difference between the two. So first off, we'll start off with access. Okay? So access refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, both physical and attitudinal, to the participation in the activities and functions of a community. At its core, access is a physical. It focuses a lot on the physical world around us, okay, which means that it's very easily assessed by checklists. Okay, there are standards out there, there are resources available everywhere, all over the internet that you can actually use to figure out whether your business is accessible. Okay, inclusion, on the other hand, where access is physical, inclusion is more psychological. Okay, it's the process whereby every person, okay, and when I say every person, okay, inclusion is not just a impairment-specific word. Okay, inclusion is when everybody, okay, so we're talking irrespective of age, impairment, gender, religion, sexual preference, nationality, so many other different ways, okay? It's when every person who wishes to can participate fully in all aspects of an activity or service in the same way as any other member of the community. So to me, okay, inclusion is knowing that that my opinions and thoughts are taken seriously, that that I am included in the activities and not just given a patronising pat on the back, good to see you out, mate. Okay, so that's the difference between access and inclusion. Hopefully everybody's understood that, okay? If you haven't, please head on over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live and ask any questions there, okay? And without further ado, let's get into having a look at accessible tourism and events. So we're going to start off by having a look at the stats, okay? Because in order for a business or a decision maker to take anything seriously, especially when it comes to looking at a new market, you need to know what are the stats. How big is the market? How much is it worth? Is it oversaturated with other people, etc., etc., etc. So the following stats have been taken from the Southwest 2017 Visitor Fact Sheet, okay, and the Economic Contribution of Tourism to Western Australia's Tourism Regions report, okay. Both of these have been produced by Tourism WA, okay, and you can find them in the Digital Resource Library or through the Tourism WA website. So this is what we found out. Now I'm going to focus a lot on the Southwest, okay, because it is one of our major tourism regions. And it is probably going to be the best way of explaining how it all works. Okay? So, what these stats say, after combing through them, is that during the 3 years from 2014 to 2016, our region here in the Southwest had on average 2.49 million overnight visitors every year. Now, this is overnight visitors, 2.49 million. That is a lot of overnight visitors coming down here, okay? Now, each of these visitors, each of these 2.49 million that we got down here per year stayed on average 3.6 nights, okay? So like I said, this is not including the day trippers. And the Southwest especially, we are in day trip range, okay? So they stayed on average 3.6 nights. Now, this is what I found interesting, okay? The economic contribution of tourism, both directly and indirectly, okay, to this region was 14%. That's huge. When you consider the size of some of the resource projects that we've got going down here, along with agriculture that we've got as well, that is a huge amount that is contributing to the economy. And on top of that, tourism accounts for almost 1 in 5 jobs in this region. Okay? Now, these sort of stats, they're not just unique to the Southwest. Okay? In the Coral Coast region, tourism accounts for an even higher percentage of the economy and up to, from memory, 1 in 4 people employed. Okay? Huge. So, tourism is a big part of our state in WA. Okay, massive part of our state. It is a main driver in the economy. So that's tourism. Now, accessible tourism is a sub-segment of tourism. Okay, so now that we know how big tourism is in this state, let's narrow in and have a look at accessible tourism market itself. Okay, now the following statistics, okay, they've all come from a report called Accessible Tourism in Victoria and Queensland. Okay, it's by Tourism Research Australia, and it's made in conjunction with each state's tourism departments. Okay, now unfortunately, no research has been released to date that focuses directly on WA. But this report that we're using also focuses on Australia as a whole. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that it only looks at the domestic market. Okay, so all of these stats do not include international visitation and international tourism. So these numbers are likely on the lower end. Okay, if you want more information about this, please hit us up at 30 Foot Drop and I can get a hold of some of the estimated stats that some amazing people over East have put together. Okay, unfortunately, this is the best that we have to work with. Now, due to the similarities between the Southwest tourism market and those of Victoria and Queensland, I've actually extrapolated the findings to calculate all of this information that's about to come out. Okay, so here we go. So this study estimates, right, that the size of the accessible tourism market for overnight and or day trippers, okay, Australia-wide, is 7% of the population. Okay, now they came to this number, okay, because although 1 in 5 people in Australia have some sort of impairment, okay, not all of them require require access that is different to the rest of the population. Okay, the 7% here are the people who require differences. Okay, these are people like me. So that's 7% of the population, or about 1.3 million people Australia-wide. Okay, 1.3 million people Australia-wide require accessible tourism events. Now, 7% on its own does not sound like much. Okay, but here's the thing. This 7%, like most of us, rarely holidays alone. Okay, you stop and think about it. When is the last time you went on a holiday by yourself? Well, I'm sorry, people with impairment, people like me, we're no different. Okay, we want to go on holidays with our family and friends. It is a chance to unwind together and reconnect. Okay, so that means that the people who require the accessible tourism events, goods and services, are not just that 7%, but also the party around them, the people that go with them. Now, the stats show that there is an average party size of 2.45 for overnight travel when it comes to tourism, and 2.62 for day trips. Okay, so once you take these into account, suddenly that 7% goes up to 17%. Okay, 17% of the Australian population require accessible tourism goods and services. 17%. That's huge. Okay? So 17%, okay, comes out to approximately 390,000 people within Western Australia alone. And once again, we're just looking at domestic markets here, okay? International tourism bumps those stats up. The estimated annual expenditure for this segment comes to approximately $8 billion Australia-wide. $8 billion Australia-wide, that's huge, okay? So this actually equates to $916 million WA-wide, or $163 million in the southwest, Okay, this is quite big. This is quite large. Okay, I mean, when you think it's almost $1 billion in WA on its own. Okay, that is a large market. Now, that's how many people, okay, the size of your market. Okay, I suppose the main numbers you got to remember from that are the 17% of the population, okay, and then $8 billion Australia-wide. Now, here we go, the unserved segment. Now, this report, it also noted that there is a segment of Australians with impairment, okay, and this includes adults who are caring for a child with an impairment, who are not currently travelling, okay? These are people who are currently not accessing the tourism goods and services, okay? Now, these people likely would travel with certain industry improvements, okay? And these improvements include the areas of accommodation, transport, and technologies. In WA, on its own, this segment is estimated to be 34,000 people. Okay? 34,000 people in WA are currently not travelling. We are not a big state. Okay? And that on its own is worth $225 million WA wide. Okay? 225 million. That's massive, okay? Especially when you consider that the current market itself is already worth 916 million. Okay? Suddenly you're looking at like 1.15. Is that right? 1.15, $1.2 billion. Okay? So there is a portion of this population who are currently not having their needs met at all, and the rest of them are making do with what's available. So, there's the market size. There's the potential growth of 225 million domestically. Okay? It's amazing. It really is. So that's the stats and the size of the market. Okay? Now, let me try to increase your understanding of this market. Okay? In order to tap into a market properly, you need to understand them. You need to know where they're coming from. You need to know what their needs are, how you can attract them. Okay? You also need to know more about them. What's their income? What are they likely to be able to afford? What is it that they enjoy doing? Okay? All of these things. And hopefully by giving you a bit of education on this subject, you can decide whether your business, how easy it would be to actually make it accessible. Okay? So, first point to understand about this market, okay, is that although people with impairment generally have lower incomes than the average for the population as a whole, they should never, never, never be considered as low income. Okay? More than 1/4 of those who identified as having an impairment were in the top 2 income categories. Okay? Top 2 income categories means that they have a disposable income above $900 per week. Okay? So, this means that tourism providers, regardless of your target market, there will be people who will be after the accessible version of what you do. Okay? On top of that, the introduction of the NDIS is actually meaning that even the lower income categories are actually ending up with more disposable income because the NDIS has taken the pressure off their pension. Okay? Something to think about. Point 2. This accessible tourism report found that approximately 55% of that segment of people, so the 7% who require the accessible goods and services, okay, 55% of those had a mobility issue. Okay? Now, this includes people who use mobility devices, such as myself, and those that have a difficulty moving more than a short distance. Okay, so this shows that access is a priority for this segment if you want to be able to, physical access, is a priority for this segment if you want to attract them. Okay, with over half of them having a mobility issue, the more physically accessible a place is, the more attractive it's going to become to this market. Point 3. Of those in the segment that do not travel, so that 35,000 here in WA who are worth 216 million, okay, 23% of them don't travel because it's too stressful. Okay, so that's 23%, and 22% is because it's just too hard. So what this shows you is at the moment, okay, planning and executing a holiday when you have an impairment is too hard. Okay? There's too many variables, too stressful. So you need to find a way as a business owner or decision maker of actually making it easier for this segment if you want to attract them. Okay? So that's point 3 of understanding the market. Make it easy. Okay? Point 1, they have the income. Point 2, make it accessible. Point 3, make it easy. Now point 4. Like most Aussies, okay, travel by people in this segment is mostly for leisure. Funny that, okay? But it was noted that visits to friends and relatives is often preferred because knowing the layout of the accommodation helped with planning and resulted in a less stressful trip. Okay? So what this means is that if people are preferring to know the layout of what it is they're going to be using, then they're more likely to use it. Okay? There's a lesson in there for a lot of businesses. So point 4, have the information accessible. Okay? So that is the 4 points to help understand the market and help understand what businesses can do. Okay? Now we're going to have a look at how... So that's what businesses need to do differently. Okay? Now let's have a look at what businesses don't need to do differently. Okay? Because there is a lot less change involved in making this happen than you really think. Okay? So, travellers with impairments share many characteristics with the broader population. Okay? The first main characteristic that they change, is that the tools used in the decision making are the same as the wider population, with internet search coming in first and word of mouth second. Okay? So, your marketing strategies and how you convey your information to your customers, okay, your marketing strategy probably involves a lot of using the internet, okay, and backing it up with creating champions out of customers who can spread the word of mouth. You don't need to change that. You don't need to change that at all, okay? So that's the first way that this market segment is the same as the broader population. The second way is what they're trying to achieve whilst on holiday, okay? And in this case, it's reconnection and unwinding, okay? Now, doing this on holiday is a core need for all Australian travellers, okay? And it's just as true for travellers with impairment. Approximately 40% of travellers with impairment sought to meet these needs, okay, of reconnection and unwinding through either more active or more emotionally/intellectually stimulating experiences. Okay, so those that offer adventure or more emotionally/intellectually stimulating activities, you don't need to change what you're doing. Okay, this is what people with impairment are after. Brilliant. Okay, as far as reconnection and unwinding, that's what most of the tourism industry is about, is being able to get away from your life and just bleh. Okay? Keep doing it. Just make it accessible. The third way, okay, that travellers with impairment are similar to the rest of the population is what they do on holiday, okay? So although travellers with impairment do slightly fewer activities, okay, most of the experiences they participate in match those of the broader travel population. Okay? So these are things like eating out, visiting the beach, nature experiences, cultural experiences. Okay, these are all things that people with impairment want to do. And let's face it, tourism and event providers, you're already doing these things. So that's another thing you don't need to change. And lastly is the accommodation and destinations. Okay. Overall, travellers with impairment tend to stay in the same types of accommodation and visit the same destinations as the broader population. Oh dear, who would have thought people with impairment want to do the same thing as other humans? Sorry for my sarcasm, okay? But it's true. Okay? People with impairment, we want to be able to do the same experiences. We hear about these amazing holidays. Okay? So if you're already in a holiday destination, you don't need to set up some other camp just for those people. Okay? We just want to do the same thing. Make it accessible. Now, one question that I have had in the past, and I will talk about now, or answer now, okay, is around the age demographic of travellers with impairment. Okay? Now, there's this misconception that when we're talking about travellers with impairment, we're talking about, 30 to 50% of the population of those are 65 and over. They're retirees wanting to get around. Okay? That is completely not true. Not true. Okay? When they did the survey, okay, and when they were looking through the stats, only 14% of the respondents that they used for this were 65 or over. Okay? So this is not just for the older population of Australia. Okay? There are so many people with impairments, like myself, who are in the middle age. We have, we're in our middle ages. We have kids. We have a wife. We want to get away. We want to relax. Okay? So if you have that preconception that I must be talking about mostly older people, you're wrong. So that is how they are similar. Okay? They use the same search methods. They like to achieve the same things. They like to do the same activities, and they like to stay in the same places. Okay? So I hope that has been really informative for you guys. Okay? Now, I'm going to jump off for about 5 minutes to allow people to put in any questions they got. But if you're not hanging around for that, okay, thank you very much for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you could please head to the 30-Foot Drop live page and go down the bottom there and fill out the short survey, okay? 6 questions, 30 seconds. It helps us immensely. Also, if you've enjoyed tonight, please follow us on social media. Give us a rating, a review, share it with friends. All of these things really help to build this brand and get the word out there, okay? Because this is an easy way for businesses to increase their profits. So, for those that are staying, okay, I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to ask questions. Now, when I say ask questions, they don't have to be specifically about what we're talking tonight, okay? They can be on anything, and I mean anything, okay? If they're on other webinars that you've watched, or you have any questions about the stats, personal questions about my life as a quadriplegic, anything, everything, go for it, okay? Open, honest conversations is what we're about. Now, if you want to ask those questions, okay, you need to head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live, okay, and use the chat box there. So I'm going to give you guys until about 6:40 to get your questions in, and then I'll come back and answer them, and then I'll wrap up. Okay, so head on over to the webpage, ask the questions, guys. I love questions, anything and everything. Okay, see you at about 20 to 7. And we're back. Unfortunately, we have no questions from anyone tonight, so I'm going to say that's just because explained it so beautifully. So, look, like I said, if you've enjoyed tonight, guys, please follow us on social media. Give us a like and subscribe. Comments, ratings, reviews, anything like that really helps. Share it with people that you know who enjoy this, who would benefit from this, because like I said, we're trying to make more money for business. Okay, so yeah, that's it from me tonight. So look after yourselves, look after each other, and see you next time.